Hello, my friend. I have a special invitation for you. I have a new, potent, concentrated group coaching program called Crucible. We begin on April 10th. You can go check out timewitchery.com/crucible, and I'm going to tell you all about it at the end of the show. So if you're interested, stay tuned. I actually think confidence is simply trust.
Yeah.
I can trust myself to have money. I can trust myself to spend money.
Yeah.
I can trust myself to invest money.
Mm-hmm.
I can trust myself to lose money.
Yeah, and I can trust myself to do it differently. The amount of people opting out of money making because they see what people do and they don't want to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're like, well, I'm not going to charge that amount. I'm not going to market myself in a way that really, where I'm really owning my brilliance and all of that stuff, because they don't want to become what they've been harmed by and what they've seen others being harmed by. And that makes sense on paper, except no one then recreates the thing.
Exactly.
Like it just keeps going and going and going.
Right.
One of the reasons that I really encourage my clients to get really clear on things. When someone says like, I just want to feel successful. I'm like, well, what is success then?
Right.
Like, let's not just say like success. Like, I want to be wealthy. Well, what is that? Mm-hmm. Because otherwise you'll never reach it. Mm-hmm. And similarly, I think that we need to, when we look at making more money and we start to be worried about the power that would be available to us or the ways that we've seen other people do things, we need to be very clear about, well, what will you do? What can you trust yourself to do with that power?
Right.
And how will you relate to it differently?
Welcome to Mind Witchery. I'm your host, Natalie Miller, and I'm so glad you're here. Hello, my friend. I'm going to tell you right now, you probably want to save this episode for your favorites. I mean, we haven't even started recording it yet, but just go ahead and know you're going to want a heart by it, or you're going to file it away, because I already know it's going to be complete magic. So today is a Conjuring episode, and I am going to talk about conjuring money confidence with money and business coach Ray Dodd. Hi, Ray.
Hello. No pressure in that intro. It'll be fine.
So Ray and I know one another in many capacities, and of course, we're both in this coaching place where we are helping especially women to do what they want. And in Ray's case, to make money and to feel comfortable making good money. So Ray, when I was thinking about how I wanted to talk about the big topic of money, of course, you came immediately to mind for me. And we get to enjoy Ray's delightful accent today as well.
I'm enjoying yours because yours is as novel to me as mine is to you.
But does it feel posh and fancy? No.
What? Does mine feel posh and fancy?
Very much so.
That's nice, because in my country it does not.
Well, and of course I associate you just with like sophistication, but I think it's also that, Ray, you are such a sophisticated thinker. And so maybe that's coloring my whole experience, because I find that when we talk about things like the conversation we're about to begin, it goes deep and it's very nuanced and it's very smart. So yeah, I'm super excited. Okay, so I'm going to start with like the easiest question ever. You ready for this?
Yes.
This might actually.
Excited.
I don't even know how this is going to go. What even is money?
Oh man,
what is money?
I often say money is a tangible thing, although increasingly not. I'm on TikTok now because, I'm trying to cling on to my youth. And I'm on a part of TikTok that shows me a lot of what Americans are confused about living in the UK. So I don't know in the States if you're quite as anti-cash as we are increasingly in the UK. Like, we use cards for everything now.
Yep.
In fact, you struggle to spend actual money. So, like, for a long time, cash was an object, right? Like, money was an object. Except it's not. Because if you and I somehow successfully spread a rumour that the economy in a certain country is tanking, the value of that, the money in that country, goes down because of how everyone their confidence everyone has in that currency.
Right.
So I often describe money as like, it is an object. It's also a form of power. It's also a lot of feelings. Like, and I think you can't really separate those things out, really. But to just say it's an object does a disservice to the reality of money.
Well, to say any of those one things, right? To just say it's power. Well, no, it's not just power. Yeah. I love this idea of money is a lot of feelings. Say more about that.
Well, one of the things that I can't even remember when this first occurred to me, but I just remember being really struck by the fact that if let's say in its purest thing, money is an object, then how can money be so exciting, so terrifying, so full of grief, so full of positivity and potential, and also so desperate and sad and lost, and all, like, you can attach so many different feelings to, so full of hope. Like, there's so many feelings that come alongside money. So a lot of it is less about money itself and more about the meaning we attach to it in any given moment. And very importantly, because you'll hear lots of coaches say, and I do agree with this, that money is energy, and there is a lot of truth in that, and power is an element of that. But we have to remember that it's also something that's used in a very powerful way to keep people like oppressed, essentially, not even essentially, just oppressed, and in certain situations. And so it's a complex beast, but the feelings we bring to it are a lot of, not completely, but a lot of where that power comes in.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, what I'm hearing also is that money is symbolic. It's representative. It represents things, right? And so, and it occurs to me also that the feelings we have about money don't even necessarily correlate to the amount of money.
Nope.
No.
And they're not logical. Like, you would think, for example, like, let's use inheritance. Inheritance is a very loaded way to receive money.
Yeah.
And I had a lump sum of inheritance when I was 20. And you would think like that shows you how complicated money can be, because amazing, I've got like a lump of money. Mine was 10 grand. I've got 10 grand. I wouldn't have that money if someone hadn't died. I wouldn't, like, what do? I want that money because of everything it represents. I'm also very sad, so I'm going to start spending that money. But then I feel bad about myself that I did all of that, because I shouldn't spend money. I should be sensible with it. But equally, I'm grieving. Of course I'm spending that money. And I don't really want that money around me anyway, because, you know, like, there's so much in it. And, like, if you look on paper, it's £10,000 as mine was.
Yeah.
That's all it is, but it's not.
It's
absolutely not.
Yeah. And it occurs to me also, you know, I talk a lot on Mind Witchery about how everything is co-created. And what we make money mean, there are a lot of voices that want to contribute to that conversation, right?
Yeah.
Money is the best. It's desirable. It's wonderful. Money is sin. Money is evidence of greed and moral, like, badness, right?
Yeah.
You know, money should be, we could finish that statement so many ways. Money should be invested. Money should be
saved.
Given away. Money should be saved. Money should be, right.
Yes, absolutely. And it's such a tricky thing as well, because it doesn't exist outside of all of the... So we've got all this money conditioning, but it also doesn't exist outside of all of the other conditioning.
Yes.
A lot of what I talk about in my work is how women particularly are conditioned to be carers and be kind to other people. And we see money as evil. And, like, you know, there's like literally that phrase, money is the root of all evil. And it's about greed, and it's the opposite of kindness. And so we start to get ourselves into these things of like, oh... Like, to make money, to charge money is the opposite of kindness. And I have been, unknowingly, we've all been conditioned to be kind. And I call it kindness at all costs, because it is that kind of like, no matter what, I have to prove my worth by always being kind. And we don't see a world in which we make money and are kind. Give money, yes, but not make money. I can't think of an example, particularly where en masse we see that as an example.
Yeah. And you and I talk a lot about, we're both white, by the way, Ray and I are both white women, but we do talk about how the conditioning, of course, is different depending on the culture that you're from.
Yeah.
So if you, for example, are a Central American immigrant in the United States, then your responsibility is to make as much money as possible, because you need to be supporting your family here, your family back home. Like, everyone's future is actually depending on you making and giving that money. So it's still the idea that the women are here to care, but it's kind of twisted around into, and so therefore you have to, you know, you can never have a break. You must make more and more and more in order to be a carer, right? So the pressures around money change and proliferate depending on what your identity is and the cultural pressures that you face.
Yeah, there's family stuff, cultural stuff, societal stuff, and all of that. I mean, the UK is obviously so much smaller than the States, but we have, I notice it, like somebody from the north of England is going to have a different experience. Somebody in Northern Ireland or like will have different experiences within the UK. Like, it's really interesting to talk to people and ask them, because like you said, I mean, I'm a white woman. Also, I can't know. There's so many different ways that this cultural stuff and our own family cultures, let alone those wider cultures, show up in this stuff. And so I always ask people, like, bring that in when we're talking about this. Like, how did this show up in your family? And it's fascinating, the differences.
Yeah.
There's a whole thing, really. I think it's in the whole of Ireland. But I hear a lot from my Northern Irish clients about having notions. So to have notions in Ireland is like, it's getting big-headed, basically. It's showing off. It's like, we would say, I don't know if you say getting too big for your boots in the States. That's something that comes up a lot. And I think in Australia, they call it tall poppy syndrome. But it's all a similar, like, vibe that comes out. And it's even stuff like that. Like, oh, well, what if I'm to say, and this definitely shows up for my friends who are second-generation Black women in the UK, for example, whose parents often came from Africa and South Asia as well, particularly here. Like, there is a feeling of like, what if I out-earn my parents? They made all these sacrifices to get me here. What if I out-earn them? And in a way, that's what their parents really want, but they have to do it they often have to do it in a certain way. And it brings up all of these things for people. And there's different versions of that for all sorts of people. Like, for working class people, I don't know, class isn't quite the same in the States, I don't think, as it is here. But it's certainly for working class people, you've often got parents, like boomer parents, who worked their asses off in jobs they didn't like. Yeah. Because they were trying to provide, they were trying to get their families out of certain situations. And then they've got these like millennial kids, or like Gen Z kids, or even Generation X kids going, I want to do it that way, actually. And I might make more money than you. How does that feel?
I love your kid voice, by the way.
Yeah. How you doing with that?
Yeah.
But
I love that.
I think it causes for the kid, and I just mean the like child of that person, the son or daughter, or however you identify yourself, it causes that fear of disconnection with that culture you come from, like to do it a different way, because there's so many layers of this stuff in all different areas of society that we're all unmuddling this really big mess. And it's a lot.
It's a lot. Okay. So I think what we're saying is money is power. Money is energy. Money is laden with feelings and symbolism and cultural like conditioning and baggage, right?
Yeah.
And money is a real thing.
Yeah.
Right. And that part's important to me, I think, because sometimes I think we can be so idealistic about money. Like it's as if I could say, I need eggs. So I'm going to go to the person who has chickens and I'm going to ask them a question that helps them figure out their life. And in exchange, they will give me a basket of eggs that I'll take. It's like, that's not how the world works. Yeah. Actually, I need to get money for my questions that I ask. And then I take that money and I go and I buy the eggs.
Yeah.
Money is it's a means of exchange also. Right.
Yeah.
So that feels important. But all of this makes me think really maybe number one, when we are trying to cultivate money confidence, is to spend some time unpacking what do we believe about money?
Yeah.
Like, what have we learned? What have we been told? What are some of the mixed messages that are really strong for us? What do you think of that? And what would you add?
The mixed messages are my favorites in a way. Like they're the most annoying in some ways, but when you realize how much you've internalized misogyny, like for example, and like one of the questions I often ask people is like, what does a wealthy person look like a wealthy woman look like? Or what does a wealthy non-binary or queer person look like? What does a wealthy fat woman look like? Like take something from your identity that maybe you tell yourself means you're disqualified, and then just be like, can you see those people? And when it comes to like the intersections of being a woman, often there's just they can't find any examples or like very few. When it comes to a more general thing like a woman, a wider something, then they're dynasty. Everyone's answer is dynasty. It's Joan Collins and it's that kind of like 80s divorcee. Real Housewives, I guess, would be the more up-to-date version of that.
Yeah.
But that's what people see as what a rich woman's like. And like, I don't know about you, I don't massively identify with many of the Real Housewives.
No.
I'm not judging them necessarily. I might be judging some of them, but I'm not judging them necessarily.
Right.
But like our aesthetics, our general way of being is never going to be the same. So I think it's that feeling. And often I say that to a client or I say it in my courses and people are like, oh shit, that's horrible.
Yeah.
That's horrible that I think I don't go. A wealthy woman is whoever she wants to be. Like it doesn't matter that instead they do have this really internalized stereotypical view. Often they're mean, greedy, all of those things that you mentioned. And I find that just so interesting that we have that tape running.
It's fascinating. Yeah. Well, I mean, what I think is that if I think of that kind of idea, the knee-jerk idea of a wealthy woman is indulgent.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and obviously we've been conditioned because if money is power and we don't want women to have power or money, then let's say, here's what happens when a woman has money. She's indulgent.
Yeah.
Right? And the reality is, of course, she's powerful.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, listen, when you look at the richest women in the world and you realize that for the most part, they've either inherited or married into their money, right? No shade, because that is the only way it's been possible for a long, long time. Yeah, but we don't correlate wealth in a woman with power. And I don't usually ask this question, Ray. Maybe you do. What about a wealthy man? I do not associate indulgence with wealth in a man.
No, not at all.
No,
because it even comes down to, you look at the different ways that men and women invest. Like if a man buys flashy cars, which lose their value as soon as he gets in the car on the main, that's not particularly judged because he's got like Seinfeld, I think. Jerry Seinfeld has got a multi-story car park of cars.
Yeah.
Like, and that's just seen as, oh, that's what a rich man does with his money. But often with women have lots of handbags, which hold their retail well and do, like, you can often sell them on. Like, that's like so frivolous. And look at her flighty shopping habits.
Right. Yeah.
And they've done studies on that the way that women are talked to about this stuff is completely different. So, yeah, I don't think we investigate it. And I think that's a problem for two reasons. I think it's a problem because we should. We should be being more critical and looking, not in a judgy way, just in a like, just thinking it through. Like, what about, well, how is that person doing it? But also because what is a real clear danger, I think, when it comes to, like, I am, like you said, I'm all for women making as much money as feels good to them. And we have to be really careful not to recreate problematic systems of power with that money we make. And so if we're not looking at how this stuff shows up in men and the women that make it too, and not being like bringing that critical eye to it and being like, what could I do differently? What are they not doing there? Like, and looking at how we use that power and how we, I would say, share that power in ways that it's not being, then I think we just recreate the same system. So we don't judge the men the same. They do behave often exactly the same way, but maybe slightly, like I said, like they're spending on watches and cars versus something else. But we have to be asking ourselves, like, let me look at this. Is this what I want?
Well, I love that that's where you went, because the next place I was interested in talking is about confidence. Like if we're talking about money confidence, I actually think confidence is simply trust.
Yeah.
I can trust myself to have money. I can trust myself to spend money. I can trust myself to invest money. I can trust myself to lose money.
Yeah, and I can trust myself to do it differently. The amount of people opting out of money making because they see what people do and they don't want to be a part of it. And so they just don't do it. Like, they're like, well, I'm not going to charge that amount. I'm not going to market myself in a way that really, you know, where I'm really owning my brilliance and all of that stuff, because they don't want to become what they've been harmed by and what they've seen others being harmed by. And that makes sense on paper, except no one then recreates the thing.
Exactly.
Like, it just keeps going and going and going.
Right.
One of the reasons that I really encourage my clients to get really clear on things. You know, when someone says, like, I just want to feel successful, I'm like, well, what is success then?
Right.
Like, let's not just say, like, success. Like, I want to be wealthy. Well, what is that? Because otherwise you'll never reach it. And similarly, I think that we need to, when we look at making more money and we start to be worried about the power that would be available to us or the ways that we've seen other people do things, we need to be very clear about, well, what will you do? What can you trust yourself to do with that power?
Right.
And how will you relate to it differently?
Right.
And I think that has its own level of layers of confidence with it.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh. And I'm just thinking, you know, when we limit ourselves, because money is systemic, right? We're all in a big system together. So if I say, oh, I'm doing all right. I don't need a housekeeper, and I don't need nice clothes, and I don't need a handbag, and, you know, I don't need all of those things. I'll just keep my prices low, for example, or I won't ask for that raise. I don't need it. Okay. But you not claiming it doesn't mean it falls into the hands of the people who do need it. It does not.
Yeah.
For it to come into the hands of the people who do need it, you have to give it to them.
And you make it harder for other people who maybe don't have access. I call it emotional privilege. That thing of where some of us have access to confidence that others of us don't, just because of our upbringing. And that is, you know, everyone's privileged, everyone's not privileged in different ways. And that is a privilege that many people have and many people won't have. You know, I think a lot about the fact that there's so many people who are like, well, I don't need to earn that money. And then they're contributing. Like, if you look at coaching, for example, and I know that there's lots of coaches charging like high amounts, but there's lots of coaches not as well. There's lots and lots of coaches. I would say much more than charging high amounts. There's a lot more charging really low amounts. And you contribute to this market value thing.
Exactly.
And just because you don't need it, like, you don't need that money.
Right.
Well, what if someone's a single mum or whatever, and they don't have that partner that's like able to support you, and you don't need to feel shame about having that partner. That's fine.
Yeah.
That just is. But equally, it's not just about you.
Yes.
It's not just about what you need and what you don't need. It's about a real valuing of what people do. And often it's women doing things that have been seen more as kind of caring work. And equally, I don't just work with coaches at all. I work with product-based businesses, service-based businesses, and I work with quite a lot of artists and makers. And particularly in the crafting world, which has been really not seen as valuable as art, like paintings and stuff like that. So you've got all these people that make cushions, for example, and they're amazing. And they charge £20, £12, dollars. Like they're like, yeah, but that's the market value.
Yes.
Because everyone's undervaluing it.
Yes, exactly. That's why for so many people, coaching is a side hustle because they can't support themselves doing it. And part of the reason they can't support themselves doing it is that culturally, we don't value that work.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
This is so huge. And, this also makes me think about, so for example, and I will just be very upfront with you and with our lovely listener. I have done so much work around this, my own self, about being afraid of having money and who that might make me. Like who might I become if I have money? Yeah. But what I've discovered as I have been able to expand my earnings and to increase my earnings is that I'm willing to make investments in other people all the time.
Yeah.
And I see myself not as less connected, like, oh, if I'm wealthy, I'm just going to be living in my gated house, my mansion or whatever. It's like, no, I actually become more connected because I employ more people, because more people, and I want to be careful here to say, like, again, you can do whatever you want with your money. Yeah. That's an important feminist premise, right? If you want to have a car garage full of handbags.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I
you can do that. Yeah. Yes. But if you are a person who is worried, like, oh, when I have more money, I'm going to be disconnected. It's like, actually, when I have more money, I get to connect more deeply and more fully so that when a woman who's running for office in the United States says, I need some funds, I can send funds so that when abortion is outlawed, basically, I can send money to abortion funds. And how do I do that? It's like I take my little toehold of power and I make it bigger. Yeah. My little toehold into making money and I make it bigger. And so then like there's more room for other people to stand there too. Yeah. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. And we talked about earlier how a lot of this thing is like just not being able to see other people that do it.
Yeah.
Like that's such a big part of it. We're just not seeing people doing this stuff. And so we don't expect it. There's been a real shift. I don't know if you've noticed this as well. Certainly over here, there's been a real shift since the pandemic of people really pulling back on their money goals and saying, well, I just want a simpler life. I don't want to go for that. And I'm all for that if you're actually being like, you know what, I bought into someone else's version of success and I'm reassessing and I want this to look like my version.
Right.
My concern is that we are living in very risky times. And because of that, naturally, we become more risk averse because we're like, oh, everything already feels so unsafe. You know, I don't want to push myself too far in that. And so what we're doing is actually settling for things because they're the safety we're used to rather than that they're the safety we want. And so we're allowing ourselves to go for these smaller amounts that maybe they don't match who we are. They don't allow us to do what you're saying. And my concern is that it will be all the women, once again, lowering what they were aiming for because, you know what, I've realised I can't do it after all. And let's be clear, it is hard.
Right.
It is. We're like dismantling old systems. It is hard. Making money itself doesn't have to be like the hardest thing you've ever done. And I know it can often feel like that, but there are ways to like change your feelings and your thoughts about that. And obviously, of course, action that goes alongside that. But I think the hardest part is dismantling the internalized stuff.
Yeah.
About who you will and won't be, like you said, and what you can and can't do and what you have permission for and what you don't have permission for. And who you're supposed to show up, like the sort of person you're meant to be in order to make money. I think that is far more complicated than the actual process of making money.
I so agree. Can we talk about this interesting phenomenon? I wonder what your take is on it. I have noticed that sometimes as people make more money, they feel less safe.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And sometimes, or I'll say for my own self, what really got my coaching business off the ground, Ray, was leaving my husband.
Mm-hmm. Oh, God, yeah.
I left my husband. I had now an apartment to pay the rent for and a divorce lawyer to hire.
Yeah.
I did not have any money.
Yeah.
And I was able in that moment to say, okay, I need more power. I need more resources. I'm now willing to go for it.
Yeah.
Almost because I had no choice, right?
Yeah.
So it's this weird thing that when you have lots of money, you think, oh, then I'm going to have lots of power and lots of choices. I find that that's the place where it gets really scary.
Yeah.
And when you don't have any money, it's not necessarily as scary. Now, of course, it depends on the person, but it's more like motivating. So I'm just curious how you see that.
I'm like steadying myself because I've got so much to say.
Yes.
So there's a few things. I actually saw a well-known coach the other day posting, and they were acknowledging all the privileges they have in their business that's allowed them to grow it to a 7-figure, I think multi-7-figure level. And one of the things they said was that they had a partner who could support them in the years that they were building it. And that can work. And I've seen the exact opposite be true, just like you're saying. When I started my business, having tried to start so many businesses in the past, I did it because we had no money. I went in to speak to my husband. He'd started a business. It wasn't making money. I thought we had savings. We didn't. He hadn't told me. And I went in and he said, Ray, we need to sell some stuff on eBay. And I was like, that man has never suggested he was going to do something like that. I was like, what? Why? And he went, I just think we need some money. I was like, why? How much money have we got? And he was like, we've got £7.50. And I was like, we've got what now? So, and I actually just did a podcast where I sort of tell that story, but it made me that absolutely, I was like, right, Ray, you have to stop waiting for someone to come and take care of you. Like, this is just you. I'd always been quite ambitious for him. I was like, you can do this. When do you think it's going to start making money? And I was like, that's my ambition that I've been giving to him. I need to take action on it. So it made me jump past so much of my own nonsense.
Yeah.
So much of my own head stuff, my own mindset stuff. And I leapt past it and I made 6 figures in my first year. Now, equally, if I'd had that partner who was making the money, I would have done nothing. But I realized, and we literally, I want to be really clear, I'm not saying we were in as bad situations as some people, but we couldn't afford food. I had to call up relatives and ask them to bring food round. And I had 2 small children. It was really not good. It was really panicky. It's when a coach said to me, not very helpfully, you really need to just step out of the need for money, Ray. Then it will come to you. I was like, cool. How do I step out of the need for food? How does that happen? Maybe you have a different relationship with food to me, but it's not really. So all what I'm saying is I think both can be true. And actually I have seen, and I love all my clients, I think one of the things that people struggle with the most is actually when they've already got that comfort. I do see them because I think you've then got to conjure up a lot more self-worth. So what I've discovered is in my journey, I've then had to move out of that emergency. My fuel for making money was anxiety and fear of losing it.
Right.
And so I've had to, as things have got easier, I've had to readjust that and change my relationship with what my fuel is for my business. But I've learned so much in that process. Whereas if you've already got that safety net, you've got to do it because, like you say, we're feminists. We can make as much money as we want because we believe that's fine. And that's a very different place to step out of all that conditioning from. It's not impossible. It's totally possible, but it's just different.
Yes.
And in my experience, stickier for a lot of people.
It makes me think of so many little sayings, little chestnuts that we have, like necessity is the mother of invention, right? That idea that no, I had to do it. I got past my nonsense because I had a rent payment to make that I didn't have previously, right? I needed to buy food. So it's that kind of impulse, right?
Yeah.
The other little chestnut is freedom is just another way of saying nothing left to lose, right? Is that if I don't have any money, I'm not afraid of losing it because I don't have it to lose.
Yes.
But once I've made some money, and I've made probably some commitments that go along with money, right? So maybe it's someone I'm employing, or maybe it's a school tuition, or maybe it's a mortgage, or maybe it's a car payment, right? Whatever it might be, is that then I get into this place where I'm afraid to lose it, and I'm afraid to go for it because I'm supposed to be afraid to go for it, right? The patriarchy wants me to be afraid to go for it. Right? And so I get into this place where I'm just paralyzed with fear, basically, around money. And I don't know about you, but I see that a lot. Like I see people wanting to invest in something, maybe to go back to school, or to invest in a coach, or even to invest in like making a dream come true. Like they want to live on a houseboat, or they want to live in Portugal for a year, whatever it is. And they're just stuck, too scared to do it, too scared not to do it, just kind of pausing there. What do you think of those moments where it's like, I want to make an investment in my growth and desires, but I just can't get myself to do it? What do you think is going on there?
So just to step back a little bit from that bit, and I'll get to that bit in a sec, but I also think what goes on there is like, sometimes our earnings outstrip our self-concept.
Ooh.
So like our idea of who we are and all of that stuff, it just races ahead. And sometimes our self-concept outstrips what we're earning. So have you ever been in that situation where you're like, I just feel like the amount of money I'm making is not matching who I believe I am and what I'm capable of.
Right.
But you can't quite get it that way. So it can go either way. So I think there's that kind of tussling between your present self and your past self, and I love the thing of like us having so many parts.
Yes.
You know, all of that, like, and it's family parts therapy is like a lot of what coaches and therapists will talk about, but also the Walt Whitman poem, which I think you used to quote when we were working together as well.
Yeah.
The I contain multitude. So we can have all these different parts of us, like arguing, like the cultural stuff we talked about, the family stuff, the work we've done on ourselves. It's like, no, I do know this. Our past, maybe this is just me, cynical self that's like, really?
Yeah.
You're a coach now? Who do you think you are?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think we have that, definitely. And then
I want to just pause there so that everybody can really hear that, right? Is that idea of there's not integrity maybe between my self-concept and my earnings.
Yeah.
There's a disintegration. And then maybe it's I'm not making as much money as I believe I should be making. Or maybe like the money I'm making doesn't correlate to the contribution I'm making, right?
Sometimes it's just an energy thing as well. You just feels not right. Like you can't really explain it more than that. It's just like, it's just incongruous, the sort of like the energy that whatever it is, the amount that matches for you.
Yeah. And just to talk for a moment about how, that feeling of that wobble or that feeling of disintegration, of course it fucks with our confidence, right? Because we don't feel right. And so if I want to be confident and self-trusting and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not even actually sure who I am because I think I should be making more, but maybe I shouldn't because I'm not ready for it because right?
Yeah.
I guess really what it is when we don't kind of have a lot of self-awareness around all of that feeling of like, this isn't right, it can shake the confidence.
Yeah.
When really what it's an invitation for is to realign.
Yes.
Right? That moment is an invitation to say, okay, well, let's realign the outer, the money part to the inner.
Yeah. And that's when I like to get super clear on, well, what's my worry here? Like, is it around responsibility? Like you said, is it around the idea that I can't sustain this? Like, what is my concern? And start to get really clear on defining what those things look like for you. Like, what does it look like for you to hold that? What are you going to do with that? What tools and resources do you have available to you? And I will use a lot of I talk a lot about your grounded self in my work. So which is like your most adult parts of you that are like, the bit that knows that like inner wisdom. I'd be like, what does that part of me know to tell me right now? Mm-hmm. What tools does it know? What has it learned? What has she learned about this journey? Mm-hmm. And then, you know, I go through this too, like, obviously, incredibly meta being a money coach constantly. But it's so useful to be able to have that conversation with the part of you that actually, self-concept wise, does get it, does know that you can, even if it's quite a, like, top-down discussion to begin with.
Yeah. I love that. In my work, I call it the inner council. We have the inner council. And, you know, yes, there's this, I love the idea of the grounded self. That's beautiful. Yeah. I may need to adopt that. I often will think it's like the guiding self or the wisest self. But yeah, it's that one. Actually, what I find is she's the one who can hear everyone. Like she lets everyone speak. So she lets the scared one and the judgy one and the really the desiring one. She lets them all speak and she lets them come together. And in my terminology, that's like uniting the inner council is like, okay, can we all come together to a consensus around what is it that we really want?
Yeah.
Can we talk about this desire piece for a second? Because I'm obsessing over it all the time. And I actually just asked this question in my Cauldron group, my small group. What's something you keep talking yourself out of wanting?
Are you asking me that?
Well, yeah. I mean, and also just to say, like, you know, especially where spending money is concerned, what's something you keep wanting and you keep not allowing yourself to want, Ray? I have mine also, but I'm curious what yours are.
Mine is the most ridiculous answer. Mine is a particular Nintendo Lego set.
Wow, okay. I love it.
So the Nintendo Entertainment System, which was, I think, the first proper Nintendo console, and they've done a Lego version of it, and it comes with a TV, like an 80s or 90s TV, and Mario jumps across the screen. It's £200. I keep looking and be like, £200 on Lego, are you kidding me? But I'm a really big Nintendo nerd. I'm a nerd generally. As came up when Natty was on my podcast, you would have heard some of my other sides of my nerdery. So it's not like, and you know, there's a handbag I really like the look of, like as well. But yeah, no, it is that first thing I thought of was like, oh, it's that damn Nintendo set that I stood up.
Yes, isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
200 pounds. I actually sort of love that in this whole conversation, you're speaking in pounds.
Yeah.
And you're probably more conscious of what that means in dollars. I'm really not. Actually, it doesn't even fucking matter, right? Because in the end, it does not. It really doesn't matter. You now are able to buy food. I now am able to pay my rent. Yeah, it really doesn't matter how much 200 pounds is.
But also, I'm pretty sure that when I say £200, it feels the same to you as when you say $200. I always think about that. Like, it's this weird thing of like, oh, but it's officially a bit more than that. I think you'll find. But like, it's exactly the same thing of like, it's all feelings of weirdness.
No, and it doesn't really matter.
No.
But how fascinating to talk ourselves out of it. Yeah. Okay. Well, do you just want to try out this whole little exercise? Because I just invented it, so we can do the whole thing. Okay. So,
yes, please.
So the next question is, why do you want that?
So this is actually quite a deep therapy answer, because I feel it's honoring a part of myself that I've hidden for a really long time. I always joke to people, and it's not really a joke, that there is a frustrated proper toy collector in me. Like I'm generally like, I can't just have one perfume. I need a collection of them. I can't just have one dress. I need a collection. Like, it's a whole thing. And there is a real frustrated toy collector in me that I have very much hidden because I just thought it was childish and not what grown-ups do. And as my kids have got into they're particularly into like Japanese culture stuff. So they're really into Nintendo and Pokemon and anime and all of those sorts of things. I've been like, oh, I love this too. And so, so it's kind of, it's because I know that it is like coachy, like parts of me are like, it's because it's honoring my inner child. That's a lot of what it is.
Oh my gosh.
And it's just honoring that part of myself.
I love that. Side note, I had delivered from the UK a stuffed animal I've been thinking about for a decade. We will put it, listen, we're going to put all kinds of resources in the show notes for you all. Okay. Don't even worry. The show notes are just going to be, it's going to have all these things that you need to see. I was in a toy store with my children, and this was 10 years ago. So they were what, like 4 and 2. And I saw this, it's called a lanky cat. It's a stuffed animal. It's a cat.
Yeah.
It has a very big head and very big eyes, but its body is super long, and it's like a beanbag thing. So it just kind of like lays on your shoulder. Right. So I wanted it.
Yeah.
But my mothering a 4-year-old and 2-year-old self was like, I don't need that. And also, you all don't need any of this stuff. We're leaving right now.
Yeah.
Thought about that cat for a decade. It's like came to mind the other day, and I thought, I wonder if I could still find one. And I found one. eBay.
In the UK.
Someone's husband selling it to be able to buy milk.
Oh.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Joking. Joking there, right? Exactly, right? So I found it, and I had it sent to me. So but no, I love that. Okay, so we're going to continue, right? So she wants the Nintendo Lego set. Why? Because it's honoring a hidden part of herself. It's honoring your inner child.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's try this out. What kind of person wants a Nintendo Lego set?
I knew you were going to ask that. And I was like, ugh, an awful man. That was my first thought. I was like, oh, God. Like, yeah, someone who doesn't have responsibilities like children.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I do. Actually, it's funny. We said we didn't judge men in the same way. I do. I think it's frivolous.
Yeah.
Like, it's just for joy.
Yeah.
There's no greater purpose to it.
Exactly.
At least a bag is functional.
Uh-huh.
And also, what will people think? So there's a bit of like, I mean, they're nerdy. Right. There's all of that stuff. Yeah.
Okay. What kind of person honors her inner child?
An evolved one. An increasingly evolved one.
Yeah. Everybody, like listen to the shift in the tone, right? What kind of person wants a Nintendo Lego set? Oh,
an awful person.
An awful man with no responsibility, right? Who won't grow up. What kind of person honors her inner child? An evolved person, a courageous person.
And I always think, like, what would I want, like, my kids to do or my friends? Like, I wouldn't be going, oh, my God. I'd just be like, oh, my God, that's amazing that you're buying a Lego set. I love it. And then I'd tell them that story I've just told you.
Yeah.
But as my kids get older, I wouldn't want them denying those parts of themselves.
No.
At all.
I love that. That's actually the spell for self-kindness right there. What would I say to a friend? What would I say to a friend? You know, I say this to myself. Yeah. So, but I love that actually, that idea, because for me, this is part of money confidence, right? When I'm only thinking about it in terms of the external and like what the external bit looks like.
Yeah.
I'm buying a stuffed cat that they're sending across the ocean to me.
Yeah.
How ridiculous is that?
Yeah.
But when I look at it from the internal place of like, I'm actually making good on a desire I had a decade ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm finally fulfilling that desire.
Yeah.
That just feels so different. And I think that, you know, when we talk about money confidence, and you gave us that gorgeous thing to remember, right? Is like when the inside, when it's just not feeling right, when things just aren't feeling right. Or in this case, when we have a desire, I want to use my money in this way.
Yeah.
To kind of allow ourselves to see that it's not just about the houseboat. It's about what the houseboat means.
Yeah. I actually just taught on this in my Plenty course. No, not in Plenty, in Money Mastery, like my mastermind type course. We looked at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how self-actualization, it's the realization or fulfillment of one's talents and potentialities considered as a drive or need present in everyone. So there was this feeling of like, it's honoring your needs is one of the definitions I took of it. And Maslow has that at the top. But as many people will know, he stole that, a lot of that principle from the Blackfoot Nation. And they have at the bottom self-actualization. So they put, and then community actualization is middle. And then cultural perpetuity, I think, is at the top.
Ooh.
And so they have self-actualization. So acknowledging, acting on those desires is what leads to community actualization, which I would say then, and it's worth, like, if you've never heard of this, just quickly Google it. You'll see loads of them. But basically, at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, he has things like physiological needs, health and safety needs, all of that stuff. But that would be looked after by that community actualization.
Right.
They put desires at the foundation of the whole triangle. And I found that so interesting, because I think we diminish our desires. And again, this is conditioning, as being frivolous things, being frivolous or being wrong. Like money desires, sexual desires, wrong. Or they're just flighty nonsense. Like I could say that about the Lego.
Right. Yeah.
But actually, there's so much in acting on your desires that actually support. Like, we often deny our desires in the name of looking after everybody else.
Right.
But I love this idea that by fulfilling our needs, by acknowledging and acting on our desires, we're more likely, like, and this is basically what we've talked about today.
Yeah.
You're more likely to create a world in which that community, and not just like you're doing the bare minimum for your community, it's community actualization.
Yes.
Which is huge.
Huge. This feels like a very tip of the iceberg conversation, actually, this idea of conjuring money confidence. And so I want to try to wrap up nicely, like where we've been. So you can help me remember, Ray, and then you'll have to come back and we'll have to talk about this more. We'll put a link to your podcast episode that I was on. So if people love listening to us talk,
I mean, why wouldn't they? We do.
Okay, so number one, money is power. Money is what we make it mean. Money's got emotional aspects and cultural aspects and physical aspects also. I heard that. And then number two, confidence is really just trust.
Yeah.
I go with fide, right? I go with trust. I go and with like allegiance to myself too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And unpacking all of those messages and listening to all of those voices that talk to us about the Lego set, the handbag, the coaching investment, the savings account or lack thereof, right? All of those, unpacking all of those voices is almost, I'm even just picturing it, Ray, as like, I need to kind of like move them off to the side, make spaces for them so I can find what even is underneath. What do I want to believe about money?
That is a huge thing of it. And I do this thing called the Moneyfesto, where people like unpack a bit of like, well, what does success mean to you? Who will you be when you have money? What can you trust about yourself and all of that sort of stuff? Because it does take us, often our gut reaction, like I said, is just to opt out because it is layered and complicated. It is. And so it's that feeling of like, well, I'm just not going to. I just can't. It's not possible. And we tell ourselves, or our brain tells us, these very flimsy, very black and white stories, which we'll listen to. And that's why, bringing in all the voices like adds color and texture to it so that we can actually get to grips with what we want, which is going to be totally different.
Yeah. And no pressure. Again, feminists believing women do what they want. But if you are a person who finds yourself talking yourself out of spending money, or who finds yourself feeling in that place that Ray described, where like your compensation is not matching who you are, or your compensation is beyond who you believe you might be, right? If you're in one of those places, like we really invite you into this work, into thinking more about what you want money to mean and what you want to make wealthiness mean also.
And I think also like allow it to be contradictory.
Yes.
Like I absolutely want a collection of vintage Chanel bags and I want to pay my team wildly more than market value for what they do.
Right.
Like, I want to do both of those things, and I don't believe I have to choose. I don't believe I have to choose between, and I think that's often what we're doing, but believing we have to choose between living with integrity, being kind, our own safety, and making money, or our own energy levels and exhaustion and all of that stuff. And you don't. Because while we've talked about the fact that money is energy, power, all of those things, if we boil it down to the truth, it kind of is just an object.
Yeah, that's right.
But it doesn't mean it doesn't have very real, tangible meaning layered on top of it.
Absolutely.
So it can be whatever we want it to be.
I keep wanting to like gesture towards that phrase about leaving money on the table, which is, you know, I think we take to mean like, oh, that's when there is money available to you and you aren't willing to or able to or focusing on getting it. And I just think, you know, this idea that money on the table is also power in the world. It just is. And yes, money is an object.
Yeah.
Money is an object, and money is power in the world. And so when we leave the power in the world, again, it does not just float out and land in the famine-ridden countries. That's not how it works. It's sucked into the vacuum.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right? It's sucked into the vacuum of the dominating systems. And if we want to disrupt them, we need that. We need that power. Yeah. All right. You're a genius and a delight. It was so fun to talk to you, Ray. Tell all of the people where they can find you and more of you so that they can fall as madly in love with you as I have.
So I've got a podcast called Money Makers, which I love. And I'm also on Instagram. I'm Ray_Dodd on there. It's really important to put the underscore because I believe there is a Republican hunter that's just Ray Dodd. So don't find that person. That's not me. They might not be Republican. I might have added that bit, but I feel like there is a lot of hunting that they do. And then I'm on TikTok as well. So if you're in that space, I'm very much enjoying playing on there too.
She is honoring her inner child in many ways, Ray Dodd is.
Yes. It's true.
I love it so much.
Thank you.
Yes, my pleasure. Oh my gosh, what a treat. All right, my friend. So thank you so much for listening. Go get that money. I don't know. I do want to tell you that. Go get that money. Yeah. Go get that money. Or at least think about it. At least consider. Okay. Thanks for listening. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to this episode of Mind Witchery. To catch all the magic I'm offering, please subscribe to the show. Or if you want a little bit of weekly witchiness in your inbox, sign up for my Sunday letter at mindwitchery.com. If today's episode made you think of a friend or loved one, your sister, your neighbor, please tell them about it. We need more magic makers in this troubled world. Like all good things, this podcast is co-created by stellar people. Our music is by fabulous DJ, artist, and producer Shammy D. Our gorgeous art is by the sorcerers at New Moon Creative. Mind Witchery is produced in conjunction with Particulate Media, K.O. Myers, executive producer. And I am Natalie Miller. Till next time. Hello. As promised, here is a little bit of info about my new group coaching program called Crucible. You know what a crucible is. A crucible is a container in which transformation occurs. It's a strong container, basically like where you melt down metals so that you can make new things. You can make alloys. And my program is called Crucible because it is designed to give you a space where you can summon the courage, the inspiration, the momentum that you need to finally take action on, to finally manifest that thing that you have been wanting to do. And what is that thing? I don't know. That thing might be a new offer if you are an entrepreneur. That thing might be the idea for the book that's been swirling around in your head. It might be an outline for that book. It might be a whole short story. That thing might be a job description for the assistant that you've been wanting to hire. That thing might be your own podcast. Whatever that thing is that you keep thinking, oh, someday I'd really love to make this happen. Crucible says, let's do it now and let's do it together. So Crucible offers 7 weeks of group coaching. Crucible offers insight into how it is exactly that I take an idea and make it real. Right? Now, this is not about me kind of imposing my method onto you, but it is about sparking your own creativity and insisting on a self-honoring way of creating. Yeah? Crucible is about community with other people who are also making it happen. And I cannot even begin to put into words how valuable that is. How much of a difference it makes to be surrounded by other people who are expanding and growing into what's next. Crucible is in large measure about helping you to claim the time and energy that you need to create what's next. And so we'll use my anti-planner, Time Witchery, to do that. We will use co-working sessions that are hosted by Flow Club. I'm very excited about that part in particular. So Crucible is not assuming that you have the willpower and courage and time and energy to make this thing happen. In fact, Crucible says, oh yeah, let's give you a place to generate that, to generate all that you need in order to manifest what it is that you want next. So you are invited. You can go check out Crucible at timewitchery.com/crucible. We begin on April 10th. We go through April and most of May. And then we get to take off for the summer, having finally taken action on that thing that you've been toying with, flirting with, wondering about, dreaming about for so long. So again, more details at timewitchery.com/crucible. I super hope you will meet me inside.